Huh? Yeah. Get your notification there.
I did.
All right.
You're live.
But that's been a while back.
I never seen him play.
I don't know. I wasn't here last week, so I don't know where we're at.
Around 5 or 6, I think.
Number 85, I can't think.
Well, I've got it on 5, so.
Pretty close.
He's 4, 5, and 6, all the same.
They got 3 of them
You're ready, you're ready.
All right, let's pray, and we will get into Exodus chapter 5. Father, thank you so much for this group you brought here this evening, and I ask that your will would be done. You would be with our conversation. You would be with the reading of your word. You would receive glory, and we would be edified, grow closer to you, and grow closer to one another. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so talking about Moses. Moses grew up in Egypt under the leadership of his kind of father, Pharaoh, and his mom, who ended up being Pharaoh's daughter. That's about 40 years long. He gets mad one day. He sees one of his fellow Hebrews getting beat, so he kills the guard. He gets scared and he runs away. He goes and he starts a new life as a sojourner in a different land where nobody knows what he did. And his Pharaoh dad and everybody said, okay, it's time to get rid of Moses. So they're wanting to kill him. So Moses is done with Egypt. He's not coming back. So he's 40 years in Egypt. Then he, for 40 years, has his new life in the middle of nowhere with sheep, with his father-in-law, who is a priest. And then all of a sudden, Moses is doing a sheep thing one day, and he sees a bush on fire. But the bush is not burning up. And so he goes and he talks to the bush, and the bush talks back. And he ends up being introduced to the God of the Bible. And he talks to him and he says, Moses, I'm going to go and I'm going to rescue my people from Egypt. And we're going to be free and we're going to go into the promised land. And we're finally going to have that promise confirmed to Abraham. And Moses says, that's great. And God says, and you're going to lead it. And Moses says, no, I'm not. It sounded great until you put me in the equation. Now it sounds like an awful idea. God, you don't know this, but I can't go back to Egypt. I'm wanted for murder. I can't do anything there. They'll kill me on the spot. God says, no, that Pharaoh, all the people that knew that you did that have died. It's time to go back. And so Moses goes back. He doesn't want to speak. He has some sort of speech impediment or just a fear of speaking. It says that he's heavy-tongued, so take for that what you will. But he gets his brother Aaron, who's a good speaker, and Aaron is all about it. And so they go into Egypt after many signs are done, because Moses, as many of us would be also, I need some assurance that this is not just my brain tricking me and telling me things that really aren't you. And so God does all of these miraculous things, and Moses is like, they don't even know who I am. Why are they going to listen to me? And God says, well, because I can turn a stick into a snake. They'll listen to you then. And then he says, check out your hand. Your hand is now full of leprosy. Now it's clean. I'm kind of the powerful God, right? And so Moses finally says, okay, that's fine. Let's go do it. So they make their way to Egypt. Now, chapter 5. They're in Egypt. They go and they speak to, in verses 27 through 31 of chapter 4, they speak to Israel, and lo and behold, Israel believes them. They believe that they're going to be rescued. They believe Moses and Aaron. So now it's time to start. Chapter 5. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. So you can imagine this is the most powerful man in the world. And this guy says, hey, according to the Lord, let my people go. And Pharaoh is like, I don't know who you're talking about. And secondly, and more importantly, no, I'm not letting, I got 1 million slaves here. No way am I letting these people go. Are you crazy? Verse 3, then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. So we're really not sure what Moses is asking here. Most people think that he is asking for permanent removal from Egypt. He's saying, hey, we're going to go a 3 days' journey, which would include parts of the promised land, depending on how fast they walked. But he does seem to indicate that, and some people think that maybe he's just asking to take a break. Hey, we're going to break from you for, we're going to go a 3 days journey so we can worship the Lord, and then we'll be back. Maybe he's saying that, or maybe he's saying, we're going to go break away, we're going to be our own people, but we're only going to be 3 days away in case, I don't know, you want to come grab us again later. It's kind of a strange thing that he said to him. We don't know if this isn't exactly what God told him to say, so maybe he's trying to,
Soften the blow.
yeah, exactly, soften the blow. It's like, let my people go for a couple days. Huh?
We'll be back.
Let's have a compromise here. Please don't kill me. Maybe. We're really not sure. But regardless, it doesn't work. The king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens. And Pharaoh said, behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest from their burdens. That same day, Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen. Before we get into what he says. So Pharaoh's argument is that this is just an excuse to get out of the hard labor. You don't care about, there's no God, there's none of this. You just want to stop working. You want to go have a vacation. Or maybe you want to move, you want to do your own thing. You're like, quit wasting my time. You're wasting time that you could be working by coming up here with this nonsense. Okay, so Pharaoh's not having it. He's not buying it. He's presenting, he's assuming what their real intent is. Why do you think Pharaoh would assume that their real intent is just to get out of work? We're really just kind of thinking into the mind of Pharaoh here.
It was working hard, like,
Yeah, it was intense.
brutal, yeah. I might say it down here on about verse 3. It says, Israel's sacrifices involved animals Egyptians considered sacred, thus the need to go 3 days' journey to be out of sight of the Egyptians. That's not speaking to Moses' mind of why he's saying that.
Yeah.
That
That-
does explain a little bit. But
Yeah, that could be it,
I
too.
had no idea that they was gonna kill animals that Egypt wouldn't.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. That's new.
I don't know if it's right or not either. Somebody thought it was right when they printed it.
So let's just go more modernly speaking. When you are about to bring bad news to somebody, why would that someone... So let's say you're going to critique somebody, okay? You're going to say something that you know that they're going to get upset by, but it's something you feel like you need to say. Why do you think it's so common for people to attack you when you are pointing out a flaw in them?
Because we don't like those people pointing out our flaws.
Yeah?
To put it back on me.
Okay, yeah.
Kind of somewhat change the subject. Well,
Yeah, it's almost like almost a reaction. I'm struggling with this, but you're struggling with this, so you don't have any right to talk
your
to me.
struggle's probably bigger than my struggle.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of the idea there is that, when we hear information that we don't like from somebody, it's very common for us to almost make the deliverer of that message the enemy, make them the bad guy, so that we don't have to listen to the message. And that's what Pharaoh did here. He says, I don't want these slaves to go, and therefore you're in the wrong. You're the one trying to get out of work. You're the one, of course, he's enslaved 1 million people, and he's treated them horribly. So his moral compass is all over the place. But he's still trying to, if we can make the person who's telling us to do something we want to do the bad guy, then we don't have to do it anymore. And I feel like people do that all the time today. Yeah, you're telling me to do something, but really, watch this. I'm going to make you the bad guy so that you shut your mouth. It's just a common defense mechanism that we use. And I think even Christians today can kind of fall into that. I have a tendency too, as I struggle with pride whenever someone comes up to me with a correction or something. I've gotten good at not verbally responding, but in my head,
In
Like
my
I-
mind,
like yeah, just couple weeks ago, I was really, it was a tough Sunday, and we were here, and the computer wasn't working, and Katie was sitting next to me, and I was getting really frustrated with the whole process. We had a bunch of people that were wanting to watch. Nothing was working the computer. There's something about when technology breaks down, I just lose it. You can't tell, but in my mind, I am bouncing off the walls, okay? And she just said, she delivered the message that I needed to hear. She said, that's not going to work. Let's do something else. And in my mind, I had like 10 comebacks to come back at her with, you know. Oh yeah? You don't think it's going to work?
but you didn't verbalize that.
Oh, I didn't. I didn't.
He's still here.
That's good. That's good. Thank you. You're still alive. It's a sign of maturity.
But there was nothing ill intent about what she was telling me. She was just like, Garrett, it's 6:10. It's too late. We need to get going. And I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear the truth. And I feel like so often in our lives, there's truth that we just don't want to hear about ourselves or our life situation. But we need to be careful not to make the messenger that could very well be coming from the Lord, just as Moses is, the enemy for that truth. That's where you get to demonizing people for reasons that they shouldn't be demonized. The idea of making their words and their critique of you or whatever you have to say invalid based upon something that, Pharaoh doesn't know why they're asking to go. He just says, I'm going to make a reason here so that I don't have to listen to you.
But we got a lot of advantages that Pharaoh didn't have. Because he didn't know what was fixing.
Oh, he didn't have a clue.
He was just,
And it was kind of out of the blue too, right? This is a new Pharaoh. He doesn't know who Moses is. And he's got this guy that comes up to him and says, let all your slaves go. He's like, no, why? He's like, because God told you to. Well, who's God? I don't care who God is.
oh, no, this guy.
Yeah. So he's caught off guard, and they're explaining to him, that this needs to happen. So he goes to his taskmasters and the foremen, the people that were in charge of pushing the Hebrew slaves, and he says, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks, as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. So I had to look up exactly what this meant. Basically, all of their buildings, all of their temples and their structures and their pyramids were all built out of mud. But they would use straw as almost kind of like a rebar that we would use with concrete to make it stronger. I'm assuming it was a more stronger straw than what I think of today. But regardless, it was strong enough that it seemed to drastically improve the strength of those mud. And they weren't like, when it says bricks, we're not talking like this. We're talking like, I think that said it was somewhere like 4 feet by something like that massive. Because if you look at pictures of drawings of how they think, because we're still not even sure how they built the pyramids. We really don't know. There's some ideas, but nobody knows how those pyramids got built. But they said some of those blocks that they would stack to make those pyramids would be 600-700 pounds. And you would see pictures of artists, what they would think, and they would literally have a rope system and a pulley system that they would lift up. And so these were massive mud piles, pretty much. But basically what Pharaoh said is like, okay, you guys want to slack, I get, and again, you kind of have the boss guy that comes in and he says, oh, you've got time to come complain to me, so it sounds like you got too much free time. And so he said, instead of your task workers having that straw ready for you to put in that mud, how about you just go get it yourself? Now, obviously, they're being worked extremely hard, too hard. But he says they can go get the straw themselves. But, verse 8, the number of bricks that they made in the past, you shall impose on them, and you shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Oh, they're idle. That's why they're saying, let us go and offer a sacrifice. So they're saying, you've got enough time to go worship God. You got enough time to find your own straw, is what he's saying. Let heavier work be laid upon the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words. So he says, all of the bricks that you're used to making on a daily basis, that still stands, but now you get to go get the straw from the fields, bring it in, and make that same number of bricks, or you're going to get whipped. It's impossible. There's no way that that could happen. Pharaoh does it as a punishment because he thinks they're lying to get out of work. Another topic to discuss real quick. You know, if you have been a boss or even if you're just thinking about, you know, I'm thinking about as a father, you know, even kids today, they'll find excuses that just blow my mind to get out of doing something, right?
You get creative.
And, you know, I found myself wanting to inflict not physical punishment, but some type of additive to what the task that lay in front of them to do to show them that, hey, you know, you need to do that. How do you think, obviously Pharaoh went too far here, but do you think there is a time to where if someone wants to get out of work, that you make that work more difficult? Is that ever a good idea?
Say I did.
You want to?
Every time we have to go
I've
get something cash, always says, I gotta go to the bathroom.
I've never been
Every
to
time.
ask the
So
bathroom
it's now it's
so
like,
much.
okay, stop. You're gonna help her finish when you're done, and by the way, you can take out the trash by yourself.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's kind of.
That kid goes back a lot.
Our kids try and go to the bathroom to get out of something, and so when one of them says, I gotta go to the bathroom, I always tell the other one, like, stop picking up the toys, stop doing whatever you're doing. When they're out of the bathroom, they're doing it all by themselves.
That's what I do at school, like if we're doing stuff, they're like, okay, everybody stop, we're just gonna wait.
Yep.
I'm gonna wait till they're finished.
Yep. That's so true.
This is an adult thing.
I've seen
I'm
some
like,
kids in the bathroom, I'm like,
I'm
they're like,
definitely
ooh,
gonna
ooh, the principal's looking for somebody to cover a class. Disappear real quick.
Right. So there are situations where that could be a lesson for people to learn. Don't try to get out of work. But I think the opposite side of that, especially if you are the one that is in charge of laying out the tasks, is not to automatically assume that that person is lazy. Now, if you know that person, and this has been a problem in the past, that's one thing. But Pharaoh has no idea who Moses is. And he knows that the Israelites are working really hard. And so for him to assume that you're just trying to get out of work, this is only going to cause more problems because obviously they can't keep up with the workload. There's no way. There's no way. And that's exactly what happens. So, verse 10, the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, thus says Pharaoh, I will give you no straw. Can you imagine being these messengers? Sorry, guys. You're going to have to go get your own straw. You can imagine the...
Oh, don't kill the messenger.
Yeah, please. We're not allowed to give you straw anymore. Go and get your straw yourself, wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least. So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw. And the foremen of the people of Israel, who Pharaoh taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday, as in the past? So they get mad. They get mad that production has slowed down. Now, obviously, we know exactly why. But maybe making a point or trying to do a lesson out of this was not worth it because now they're starting to lose production. And again, these workers, these taskmasters, they're not really the ones, it's not their fault. They're just the ones that are in charge. But they still have to get their quotas, right? There's quotas that you have to make, so they get in trouble too. And so really it's a no-win situation that comes from the top down because of this rule that Pharaoh has instituted. So, have you ever had a boss that has instituted a rule that has made things way more difficult?
Some do it, they don't know that they're doing it.
Yeah? So let's look at it from the employee side, or the one who works for somebody. Any examples you can think of, or if you don't want to provide the example, maybe something that how you responded when there was a rule that was passed down that just made things almost, just impractical.
Verbally or inside my head?
Yeah.
However open you want to be, brother.
You're staying out here till this plant gets running. I don't care if it's 40 hours.
That's
And
right.
sometimes it was.
Sometimes it was, wasn't it?
What's that?
Me and him used to work together out there at the gas plant.
Gas plant.
Oh, yeah.
Thing go down.
Stuff had to be running. I didn't care if it was. We were
Yeah,
out there
about
30 hours sometimes. Like,
Man.
still working.
My grandson is working underneath a man right now, and the man he criticizes everything that has been done. And it just really makes it hard for him and probably the others that are working under to go to work.
Yeah.
It's just very difficult.
Yeah, morale is really important too. That your workers feel like they know what they're doing.
I think a lot of times bosses forget, and since they don't actually do the job that you do, they don't understand the pressure that they put on you. I know I had a boss like that one time that they passed something down, and everyone who was at the base level, which is where I was like, there is no way that I can complete this task in the time frame that you've asked me to complete this task in. And somebody finally was like, it was like, it kind of went up the chain back up to her, and she was like, oh, so you guys need more time? And we're like, yes, what you ask of us is impossible. And it was like, she still pushed for a tight time frame, but she was like, I didn't even realize that what I asked for was completely unreasonable. I know it's not the situation every time, but I think a lot of times they don't even realize what they ask of you.
Yeah. So especially, a boss, maybe the Israelites could have said, Pharaoh, you get down here and see if you can, do this. All this stuff that you want us to get done when you're making us go get the straw ourselves. That's a tough spot to be as an employee, because I feel like in one instance you feel trapped because, they're your leadership, they're your boss, and especially if it's a boss that doesn't really give you any slack, then you know that it's kind of up to you to make it work regardless of how difficult it's going to be for you. But then at the other hand, especially if you've got people to work underneath you, then you're in a really tight spot because you've got pressure coming down from the top, but then you got pressure coming up from the bottom, right? And so it's just it's a difficult place to be in an employment setting, and I think that does have a lot to do with leadership. So that's one thing I've seen with leadership, and we're a little bit away from the text, but I think it is still practical. Is as a boss or as someone who would direct, or even as a parent, is it okay to push or set impossible standards just so that the employee or the kid or something would rise to their max potential? Because I feel like sometimes that's the idea, is that we're going to set a standard that there's no way you can reach just so that you don't ever fall short. Do you think that's a good thing, or do you think overall that becomes a negative thing?
Could come a negative thing, I think.
Yeah. Just
Expecting
knowing.
the kids to do more, especially a kid, to do more than he can do,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then help their confidence and their ability.
I think that's a big part of it.
And then, give him something he can do and then brag on him when he does it, build his confidence,
Mm-hmm.
build his self-esteem. Because, giving them too much and criticizing about it can ruin their self-esteem.
It could.
So they probably got the closest straw, and they had to go a little farther, and a little farther, and a little farther.
Well, that's what it said. They were
And
scattered
so
all
it
throughout.
just made it even worse as time went on.
And this is what? This is
They had no way.
over 1 million Israelites. You can imagine that at the very least, probably 400,000 were men that were working. I mean, that's
That's a
especially
lot of straw.
in ancient Egypt. It was big, but it wasn't that big, So you're, after a week or two, you're going miles to get strong. And so just an awful place to be. So before we move on, now this is obviously a special situation because this Pharaoh is evil. There's no reconciling what he's doing. He's not doing this, he's doing this to punish them. He has these expectations. He's punishing other people. But in a situation where you are asked to do more than you know you can handle or more than you know is possible, as a Christian believer, what do you think is the best way to go to your boss or go to someone who has told you to do that task and express to them the impossibility of it?
Sir, God told you you're crazy.
Yeah. I feel like I'm the person that would probably not ever say that, and I would just kill myself trying to
You
do
can
it.
only do the best you can do.
Look, I had an incident because, you know, being a coach, you know, most teachers you teach, if you're a coach, you coach and you teach classes. Well then, not only do I coach and teach classes, but I'm also the special ed director, which requires some time consuming hours on the computer. And it's not like being in a classroom where you can get on your computer after you've taught a lesson and kids are working, you get on the computer and work, because I'm in a gym.
Yeah.
So I was very limited, and I only have like an hour and a half a day to plan, eat lunch, and do sped. And I caught myself running behind on sped paperwork, and I was getting in trouble, and I'm like, I've asked as nicely as I can, I need help. I asked the lady that was being the teacher to help, but I was told not my job to tell her, I need you to do this. I thought if I dropped hints, that she would volunteer, and she didn't, and I'm like, okay, I can do it. Because I'm also one of those, I want to be good at what I do, and I'm not just going to come out and say, I can't do it. I need, somebody else has got to step in. I will just, I bit my time and time, next thing I know, I'm sitting in the office, they're like, we're behind. I'm like, I know we're behind. I know, and I've said I need help. Like, nicely. You know, but, and I catch myself, because I don't want to ask. I'd rather just do it myself, get it done, and never have to ask anybody for anything.
Mhm.
And it comes back sometimes.
I think what you said and what Katie said too, that's a big part of it is, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong, especially as a Christian, not to challenge the authority of that person, but just to say, I want to make sure you understand all the stuff that I have to do.
Yeah.
Make sure you know all that's on my plate, because there's a lot of times where they may not realize the load that they've given you.
Yeah.
But it also can be disheartening too when you have a boss that you know if you go to them and express that, they're just going to call you lazy.
Or say, why are you talking to me when you could be working?
Exactly like what Pharaoh did. Sounds like you got time to come.
You got time to rock about it, get up there and work.
Right, so find your own straw.
You know, so there's a lot to be learned from this interaction, whether you find yourself in a leadership position or being led in some type of service role. To understand one another, to have that open line of communication, and to not insinuate ill will on either side, but try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think that's what it comes down to. And again, if you got someone that you've worked with or worked for or worked under for years and years and years, and you know them, it's a little bit easier to figure out. But especially someone that you've just met, you know, to try to give people the benefit of the doubt until they give you a reason to do otherwise. But in this situation, Israel is upset. They're upset that their production's not up. I don't remember where we left off, but I'm going to start in verse 15. I think that's close to where we were. But they're mad because Israel's not having the production that they should. And then in verse 15 it says, Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say, Make bricks. And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But, he said, you are idle. You are idle. That is why you say, Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Go now and work. No straw will be given to you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks. And so Pharaoh almost sees it as, if you have time to take a break, you have time to work. And that's one thing, too, that Katie and I have talked a lot about, is I don't have the personality to take a lot of breaks. And I can see that, and I have seen that with family members where work kind of becomes so ingrained in me to get things done that I neglect Katie, I neglect family, I neglect people that I should be investing in because at home I'm still thinking about work, right? And so it's obviously an awful thing to never expect anyone to want to take a break, to take a vacation. I'm more of a fan of staycations than vacations, but regardless, to take a break I think is important. And Pharaoh is saying, if you have time to take a little 3-day vacation, then you have time to work plenty hard. And I think that's also one thing, especially in ministry, whatever role that we find ourselves in, is that breaks are important. Days of rest are important. But I know that there's just so many industries today that don't really account for breaks, don't really account for a lot of vacation time.
Really not done against them. He's mad. He's taking out of what he's mad at Moses.
Yeah,
Is the reason he's doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing it to get back at Moses.
and you can see that his anger is directed really towards the fact that these unknown people would stand up against him and make this ridiculous proposal.
Yeah.
But they say, look, we can't do this. This is ridiculous. You're whipping us for something that we can't do. It always makes me think of in high school when we would run for basketball. We would have the big guys that would not finish. But our coach's philosophy was, until everybody finishes, we're going to keep running. And we would just run until they were laying on the floor. Because, I mean, they were running as hard as they could. There was no way they were finishing. So we would just run and run and run until they threw up. Then he'd be like, all right, everybody to the locker room, you know. But he was doing the same thing Pharaoh was, where he was giving them an impossible task and then punishing them when they didn't complete it.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, of his anger towards Moses and Aaron and really the people. They were still oppressed. They were slaves. They weren't held to the same standard of the Egyptians. So,
Don't you reckon that if Pharaoh had went out there and encouraged the Israelites to tell them what a great job they were doing, this, and this, and build a relationship with the people that he would know, and they would know that he likes us and we like him, he would have got, he would have got no telling how many bricks they could have done.
yeah.
Yeah.
It'd have been less eager to go Moses and Aaron
Yeah.
take off, too. So that's all part of it. God hardening Pharaoh's
Yeah.
heart, right?
Yeah, we're really getting to that idea where,
To that thing.
But there's a lot of bosses out there that's like Pharaoh. A lot of them out there. I had a lot of employees under me when I was working, and I never had one that didn't like me, that ever said anything about me negative. And they would bend over backwards, to do what I wanted them to do.
yeah,
Still today, most of them did today, but still today, the ones that are alive, I still get calls from them, still talk to them, and encourage them. What people want to know is, how's your family? What grade you in? How do you like your job? How do you go? All these kind of things, that you can build a relationship with people just by encouraging them a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And they will, you built something that will last forever. And it's no different with kids, your kids. I mean, it is so easy to encourage your children you're doing a great job now. Let's try this here, this way, or this or this or this. But if you get a good relationship with your children, I want to tell you, they're a lot easier to handle.
yeah. Yeah, I would say that there are moments where ruling with the iron fist is
It
productive.
is. I mean, there's moments when you just want to read their day.
Only like 3 times a day.
But
Only see the good side of stuff.
So, Israel names their complaint. They said this is impossible, but Pharaoh says, I'm not changing my mind. This is still what you are to get done, and you are to get it done, or you will be punished. So, in verse 19 it says, the foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day. So they they met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, "The Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put the swords in their hands to kill us." And I can imagine just them walking up to Moses and Aaron saying, "Our heroes. Thank you so much for standing up for us to Pharaoh to make our lives better." You know, they get upset because they're like, "You have made our lives so much worse by doing this. Why did you do this?" And then Moses, he just turns to the person next to him too, right? He turns to the Lord and said, "Oh Lord, why have you done this evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all." And so, man, I've been in this situation, and I'll tell a story in a moment, but where, you know, you do something that you really feel like is the Lord's work, and then something happens where people are like, "Well, I just did this, and this happened to me. Why did that happen?" And I'm just like, "God, you know what? I have no idea." Oh man, you know, I feel for the people of Israel, because they were told that they were going to be delivered, and now here they are in a way worse situation than they previously were. I feel for Moses, because Moses, he was told, "Hey, we are to go in there." God says, "Go in there, rescue the people, and I'll bring them out." And then Moses goes in and says, "Let my people go," and Pharaoh makes it way harder. Moses is like, "God, did you hear what he just said? That's not what you said he was going to say," you know. But actually, if you remember the conversation, God did say he was going to harden Pharaoh's heart so that he would continually say no. But he didn't tell Moses exactly what that would look like. And so Moses doesn't even stop at why is this happening, but he even says, "Why did you ever send me?" He's like, "Why am I here? If things are not working out how I think they should, why in the world am I here in the first place?" You know, and I think we find ourselves in that situation a lot too when things aren't working out. It's like, "God, why would you even, you know, do this? Why would this opportunity open up for me if it's just going to be hard, if things are going to not work out the way that I think that they are?"
And then you wonder, did I listen to the Lord right? Did I really hear from him? You know, I'm going, I don't think maybe it was him telling me this, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
He screwed it up so bad.
Sure. I think of a specific situation where early on in our college ministry, we were really investing in teaching a young lady from Nepal who was Hindu. And she started coming to our apologetic classes and really getting invested, and she ends up being saved. And then like a week after she gets saved, her grandmother dies. But one even worse than that is like a couple days before her grandmother died suddenly, she told her mom and her dad that she was leaving Hinduism to become a believer. And then so afterwards, she comes to me and she says, "Hey, I've talked with my mom, and they're saying that because I left Hinduism," and if you're familiar at all with Hinduism, they pretty much have a god for everything. They have a god per family. They have a god for food, for death. They have a god for life, the sun, the moon, the cows. You know, everything has a particular god. And they said that the god of death was punishing Yashna and her family because she left the faith. And her parents were blaming her for leaving the faith for her grandmother being killed. And she's like, "Why, you know, it would make so much sense if things got better, so that could be a witness to my parents, right? That things are better whenever I left and I became a Christian. But it seems like, well, God, I don't know. I don't know why that is happening." And so I was kind of left speechless, and like Moses, I was like, I don't know. I can't answer that question for you. That's tough. But I feel like that happens sometimes, where even when we do something that we feel like the Lord wants us to do, things don't turn out the way that we expected them to. Therefore, it's like, why did I even do that in the first place? Y'all have any thoughts on that, or examples of that, maybe times that has happened to you? you really feel like you were on the right track, you were reading the Bible, you were going to church, you were doing something you really felt was good, and then something just awful happened, or something just relatively bad, or nothing good happened, right?
Yeah.
It can be easy to get upset. You're like, I thought things were supposed to work out better whenever I turn my life around, you know? And that's where Moses finds himself. He's like, why am I here? Why am I even suffering through this issue if it's just going to lead to your people being suffering more so? Any thoughts on that? Why do you think God would purposely, remember, he's hardening Pharaoh's heart. Why do you think God would have things happen this way? When Moses is being obedient, why do you think he would make it harder on the Israelites by hardening Pharaoh's heart? Or allowing Pharaoh's heart to be hardened?
I don't know.
It's a hard question.
Until you read chapter 6.
Well, we're not there yet, Kelly.
You put ahead, Amy.
He answers a lot of those things there, and you're like, yeah. And they probably did too, as they saw the plagues and the things that happened. I would think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I think God's trying to teach them how to rely on Him. I mean, you know,
That might
to
be-
be
there you
obedient.
go,
I mean,
there
you know,
you go.
even,
That's a good answer, right?
Yeah, I thought it that way.
Because that's the hardest time in life when it's to follow God, is when things don't work out the way we want them
Yeah, it's easy to follow when everything's going great, isn't
to. Yeah.
And there's other people that say, see there? You know, and then that gives you an opportunity. Unless you're aggravated.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
like we talked about,
that's just an opportunity, basically.
God is so much bigger than we are, and so much more holy that we don't always see the big picture of what He's going to do. I mean, you know, it's hard to.
I don't think we realize who God is sometimes.
Well, right.
You know, that's it. You know, you just really can't comprehend
No.
who God is, really.
And they were kind of guilty of the same thing.
Yeah.
They were not looking past the end of their nose very far, and God was looking out there years.
Where He knows the future and
And I'll kind of answer that original question, because you said in chapter 6 to get to it. And actually, 8 times Moses relates God's message to Pharaoh and says, this is so that you will know that I am God. Because remember, Pharaoh had said, I don't know God.
yeah.
I don't know who this Lord is.
You probably shouldn't have said that.
And God's like, oh, I'll show you who I
I'll
am.
show you.
Yeah. I'm fixing to show you.
And so we do see that, you know, though we would like life to go smooth, sometimes God gets more glory. And I would argue, unfortunately, most of the time God gets more glory in the darkest places. And that's
It brings you to a bad situation and pull you out of it. You know, that's when you're really thankful.
that's true. That's a good point.
You know, that's right.
And as the people get, I mean, you know, if you get further into Exodus, the people are led out of Egypt. I mean, they've seen all them signs and everything, and in the wilderness, they still say, "You let us out here to die? I mean, you know, to starve? I mean, you know, it's
That's yeah, it really gets crazy in there. First little bad thing that happens, they want to go back to
Right, a
Egypt.
day or two after he parted the waters.
Yeah.
See there?
Yeah, you're exactly right. They say, "Why'd you bring us out here? We want to go back to Pharaoh so we can
Hey,
go
listen,
gather our own straws and
you
make
guys are
bricks."
way too far ahead of the story here. But I'm glad you're making those points.
Wait till we get there, right?
We're asking questions here that, yes, will be answered in the future. But I'm trying to help us see in the eyes of these people before they know what's going to happen. And I think that's where we find ourselves today.
Yeah.
That we don't know what God's plan is. We don't know what He's going to do. And it can be very easy to be like, God, I have no idea why this is happening, because in my mind, this shouldn't be happening.
Well, yeah.
But like you said, and how would we ever know that we're blessed and the Lord provides for us richly if all we ever had was blessing and richness.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Any other thoughts, final thoughts, questions?
If we was blessed richly, we'd probably think it was something we'd done. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, we want more.
yeah, I could get more blessings and richness and.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly blessings can become expectations. We're already, from our kids never really having much of a Christmas to now we're having to tell them, don't ask for more presents.
It doesn't take long, does it?
It doesn't. I was expecting at least a couple years, but no. It took one time. Do you have any more?
Is that all?
Family Christmas, I said, this is Carol's present, go take it to her, and Genesis took it over to her and opened it up and said, a blanket, thank you! And I was like, no, that's not for you. But she was like, every single one's so sweet, she wants to give her a present, and then it turned out she got baskets for her. Yeah, that's sweet, mommy.
And unfortunately, I think in heaven we can. On the new heavens and earth we can. But here, we can't handle the full blessing of God.
No.
Our minds, our ego would shoot to a level that we have pride in our hearts.
Yeah.
We would take credit for it immediately. But you can imagine the limited blessings that the Lord gives us now and how different that's going to be when we don't have pride in our hearts on the new heaven and new earth with our new bodies and having the rich blessings of the Lord in its fullness, something that we can't even comprehend.
Can't even imagine, can we?
No.
What heaven's gonna be like.
No way. No way. But like you said, that's one thing also that I think God allows viruses to go around and death and happen and all this darkness is so that we'll look forward to the new heavens and new earth that much more.
Yeah.
Because I want Jesus to come back
Now.
more now than I ever have in
Worse
my
than
entire
happened
life.
last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the point.
Yeah.
All right, let's pray. God, thank you so much for this study. Thank you for all that you've done for us. And I ask that we would take this message to heart, this story of how you deal with your people and those that you love, and how your love looks so different than our love, and how the fact that you know all things changes the way that you do things in comparison to us who are so limited in knowledge. Help us understand that. And I ask as these people go out that you would bless them this week. You would give them favor. You would use them for your glory, and you would provide for them all the needs that they have. And Lord, I pray that you would use us for anything that you wish. In Jesus' name, amen.
Say, all right.